Hello, everyone, and welcome to another GamePad Online interview. My name is Nigel, and hopefully, as you know by now, I'm here talking to different industry professionals across video games. So I'm the co-founder of mayamada, organizer of GamePad Online. And as we do with this series, I like to talk to different people in different places in video games to get insight into the work they do, how they got there, and any challenges and specifically advice that I can give for young and aspiring video games professionals. So right now I am speaking to Reema Ishaque, who is the personal assistant to the COO at Splash Damage. Reema, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Nigel. Hi, everyone. Hope you're well.
Cool. Yeah, no, I wanted to talk to you. So I'm looking forward to this because a lot of times we speak to people who are in roles that people might be aware of, and you're in a role that like even I didn't necessarily think of at the time before we spoke. So I'm like, okay, I need to find out more about this. So this is as much for me as it is for the people watching. So we're gonna.
No, definitely. I personally wasn't aware of these kind of roles in the game industry before I started here anyway. So if I can share any knowledge, it'll be great.
There we go. We're all going to learn something today. All right.
Yep.
Before we get into it, I just want to remind people that you can always let us know what you think in the stream chat, in our Discord if you're watching this later, and also you can reach out to us on social media. So we're at mayamada on Twitter, at mayamada TV on Instagram. So always want to hear from people, especially if you have any sort of questions. If you're someone who does want to, by the end of this interview, if you want to get into this role, let us know and we'll point you in the right direction, which is Reema. Reema is the right direction. All right. So we're going to talk about what you do at Splash Damage. I also understand that you co-lead an employee resource group, sort of alongside raising awareness of different cultures within video games, which sounds really interesting. Also know from when we spoke before, you are a mother and you cook as well. So we're going to talk about food most likely by the end of this. So
yeah.
Okay.
We have to talk about food. I love it.
Okay, it has to be done. All right, let's talk video games first. At least get that done. So, like I said, you're a personal assistant, and that's a role that I've not considered. So, what I'd like to know is actually even before you got there, like your journey to get into this point, is what kind of jobs did you have before coming into the games industry?
So my previous job prior to Splash Damage was a personal assistant, but the difference is huge compared to what I'm doing now. Prior to being a personal assistant there for 6 years in my previous job, I was working in car showrooms as just like general receptionist. I did go to university, but I dropped out after a year and a half because I just felt like going down the education route just wasn't for myself.
Really?
So when I was there, I did media and cultural studies. I wanted to eventually get into journalism. That was my end goal, I guess. But after getting onto the course, it just didn't feel right. So I decided just to go to full-time work.
In what way didn't it feel right? Like what you were learning or the environment?
It's a bit of both. I honestly wasn't feeling to wake up every morning and go and do this course. Which I'm not going to lie, it is one of my regrets in life. I feel like, I should have just finished. I was halfway there.
Because I was going to say, you did a year and a half. It's not like you got there in like 6 weeks. So like, to say for me is you must have done some work.
Yeah, it took a while. And I'm not going to lie, cultural background, my dad was like so disappointed. Like I didn't finish my degree because he was always that type of parent. He never got educated, so he always wanted us to get educated. So he was like really big push, get your degree, and then whatever you want to do afterwards, just do anything you want, but get your degree. So I felt like I disappointed him a little bit. But when he saw, I managed to secure a full-time job within a week of leaving uni. I paid back my student loans and stuff, and then I became a mother quite soon after, to be fair. So it's really interesting career path for me. But personal assistant at Splash Damage, the role really looks like, day-to-day diary management, getting involved in the production side of things, setting up business development meetings, talking to various business partners and things like that. So it's really varied here. But what I really enjoy about my role is that there's a lot of room to progress, because some people think, oh, you're just an assistant or you're just a receptionist. And they kind of, think a receptionist and an assistant is the same thing. No, a personal assistant is, working really closely with, the exec board, getting involved in all these business development meetings and, pushing in regards to production side and note taking with them and stuff like that. So it's varied, and I can get promoted into a different role, so I can get higher level than a personal assistant to executive assistant. So that I've never had in my previous roles.
Okay. And then, because you say you were a personal assistant previously, but in a different capacity. So is there anything that you brought over from like a different industry into games? I mean, I guess you were kind of doing a similar role, but is there anything from a previous industry that you were able to bring over, whether it's skills or particular experiences that help you in what you do now?
I think the experience, obviously, of my general day-to-day role, obviously I brought over to Splash Damage, but starting here, I realised that their processes and the way they, carry on day-to-day is completely different. So I kind of had to start again from a junior level, but from my previous experience, I would have assumed that I was more senior than I am here. So that was a little bit of a shock to the system. But with saying that, my line manager was really keen on providing the training where necessary, and getting the system right so that, my day-to-day job is easier than it should be, kind of thing. So we've got a support network here. So we're a team of 3 personal assistants, and we make up exec support here at Splash Damage. So we work for the board of CEOs and COOs and things like that.
Yeah, and you've got the kind of role where you're also going to have to explain another role, which is COO, because you're a personal assistant to COO. What is a COO, and
so
how does that work together?
The CEO is the Chief Operations Officer here at Splash Damage. With that, he oversees a lot of the production team. So whether that be the VP of production, the creative director, and the leads of certain projects and things like that, he basically oversees all of it. He also has to get involved in sort of some of the finance delegations and things like that. Although we do have a chief financial officer and we have a chief executive officer, CEO, all 3 of them work really close together to make up, the leadership team here at Splash.
Yeah, so I guess like the CEO is the person who's making sure things are like sort of ticking over and whatever department, and then you're supporting that person to make sure that they're doing the thing that everyone else needs.
100%. And when I say he has no time in his diary, it's manic.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can imagine that, because even like some of the stuff that I do, and it feels kind of busy, but I know there are levels to these things. So when you get to the point where you need a whole other person to help manage what you're doing, that's like a different level of manicness.
100%.
Yeah. So one of the things I like about doing these interviews is you kind of find that people come from different places and have different experiences. I think that's really, really cool. So for you, coming from someone who, like you said, you wanted to, in this first year and a half of university, you wanted to do journalism, and decided,
Don't remind me.
Yeah, it might get brought up a couple of times. But so I didn't hear games in there. So you didn't necessarily have a plan to go into games. So what I want to know is, what was your perception of the games industry prior to entering the games industry, and then how has that changed?
So when I was looking up this job role, I was actually referred to this job role as from a friend, who I previously worked in my last industry that I worked in. And then I tried to do research and to find out what the game industry actually entails. From my perception would be just, it's a PlayStation or it's an Xbox, and you put a disc in and, you got your console and
Yeah.
your controllers, and that's it. Because I've never played games apart from playing games with my brothers.
What
I
games
never
out of
looked in.
interest?
So we used to play Tekken.
Okay.
We used to play like Sonic the Hedgehog, and all those little games
Yeah.
like from Sega, like back in the day. But I was always that little sister in the background, like, can I play now? And they're like, no,
No,
like go away. So when you'd be sick or something from school, and they were at school still, I would like get the Crash Bandicoot out, and I'd be secretly
that's where you get your
playing.
practice in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, and then they'll come home and they would like shout at me for playing in their room and things like that.
Did you mess up the save game? Did you do that?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I had to create a separate profile,
Okay. All right, yeah, because you can't do that. I've had experience.
You can't
with
mess
that.
up the story, can you?
Mess up the save game.
And when I would play Tekken, I'd just press the same button over and over, and they're like, "That's not how you play. There's different techniques and things like that." But that's my perception of gaming. So trying to look into this role and trying to look into the industry to find, how would you go about starting to make a game and things like that was quite interesting, because there is a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of roles that it takes to make a game, and I 100% did not know that until I started doing my own research. And then I thought, okay, so am I going to be able to do that in assisting the COO? Because obviously this person is going to be overseeing so much. Am I going to be capable, without the game industry knowledge, to come along and do this role? Because technically I should already have a back history of information that I can provide to him, or he might say like a word and I wouldn't know how to reference it,
Was that the
but
case?
Sometimes, but I'm such a keen learner. When it came to actually getting the role, I was just so happy to be a part of the team. I was like, okay, I'm going to sign up to every mailing list that, possible for all these news articles. And if someone says a word, I'm going to have my little gaming dictionary on Google, and I'm just going to type it in and find out, and, that kind of thing, just because I'm such a people pleaser and I just wanted to get the job done correct. So that's one advice I would give in general. I would just say, look, Google is at your hand. The internet is at your hand.
Google is
if
your
you want to
friend.
know something, get on there and just type it, search it, speak to people, ask questions. Always ask questions. No question is incorrect.
No. Yeah. No, I think that's true. And I think it's I mean, I guess it's differs from industry to industry, but it's no different in the fact that there is an industry, there's, certain knowledge that applies to this industry, and not everyone will know it day one. But like you say, if you you take it upon yourself to learn, to pick it up, it's not, we're not dealing with magic here. Like we know how this works. So you just so you just kind of,
there are
look it up.
processes everywhere, isn't there?
Yeah.
So you just got to find where the processes are, and I guess you need to find the right people to talk to as well within like certain industries. So if you can find those people and you can ask the right questions, I'm sure 100% you'll be able to get on in a role perfectly.
So, and with your role, like you touched on the sort of day to day. Is there something that surprised you in terms of what you do now versus what you were doing as a personal assistant before? Is it something that you were like, oh, well, I didn't know this was a thing in the realm of being a personal assistant?
So I think it's been about a year now. I've been more involved in taking notes and running action lists for execution reviews within the studio. So that is where we have a project, and every month they come with certain documentation.
Is that they being the executive team? Or?
So it would be like the project team. So it would be like the leads, the producers, development team. They'll come along with certain documentation, and they have to show us where the game is at the moment. So this I've got involved because my COO obviously oversees all of this. He needs to know obviously how a game is developing or how a project is developing. And I didn't realize how much I would actually enjoy this side of things. When I see like resource plans coming, or like budgets and timelines and milestone specifications. I'm like, oh my God, this is so interesting, because I never knew how much work went into a specific game. So I really appreciate all of that side. And for the last year and a bit, I've just been getting involved, taking notes on a regular basis, providing my reports to the SLT, so the senior leadership team. And yeah, so I just feel like, oh, I could be a production assistant now from all the knowledge I know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I kind of want to see my career going. And then we'll just see how it goes, I guess.
Okay, so you found you liked the planning, resource planning, people planning part of it. Yeah, that's interesting. And you mentioned a couple times like the aspect of taking notes, which is really important, because like I'm not the best at it, but you kind of, because you'll have a meeting and you'll step out of the meeting and you'll forget like things that have happened. So I just wanted to highlight that as how important it is to be able to take notes, to track what you're doing, especially when you get to that scale, because like Splash Damage, like AAA sort of company in the games industry, so there's a lot going on, so you want to make sure you're tracking everything.
It's 100%, it's go, go, go all the time. So you could be having a 10-minute call with somebody and you could have like covered about 20 points. But if someone's not there to note take, then how are you going to keep track, and how are you going to have ETAs, like, you know, time limits, and who's going to be actually actioning all these items? So you have to, you know, someone has to be there to do it. And, you know, Megan's here, is ready for it. I'm like, yeah, get me in the meeting and I'll take all the notes. It's fine. And then I'm good at delegating the tasks out as well. I'm like, right, I know you got time. You know, I've seen your diary. You can do this. Yeah,
the people must hate you then. It's like you can't hide anything from you.
No, you can't hide anything. They love us exec support team.
Okay. Actually, you're kind of, you're selling me. I need to find a personal assistant. You're selling me on this. So I think I might do that. Well, after we record this. So, all right. So, and like you're in the games industry now, and you've mentioned something that surprised you about your role specifically. Is there something that's sort of surprised you about the games industry as a whole, other than you mentioned just the amount of like people and moving parts?
In regards to the game industry, I never realized how much of a small network it is. Because there's all these different studios and there's all these different roles, you would assume like it would be such a big networking, you know, team or, you know, industry, but actually a lot of people know people. And I think it's the help of like social media and certain conferences, you know, that people go to on a regular basis, and the conversations and the friendships. I think gaming industry, I've realized there's a lot of friendships involved, which I really like, because the studio I'm working at the moment, like Splash Damage, it's all about, you know, 3 friends who started making games and, you know, then decided to take it a little bit bigger. And, you know, one of the ethos is like, you know, values around family and putting the team together. So I feel like, you know, having a close network is really, really important. And I think that's what I didn't realize would happen, where I came from a fashion industry. So from coming from a fashion industry where, you know, you just say hi bye, to come into an industry where actually, you know, people know people, and you could say, oh, I know so and so from this studio. Yep, I've passed them before. I've had a conversation with them before. You know, things like that. I think it's really cool. Okay. I never realized it at all.
That's interesting. I don't know anything about fashion. Like I don't know anything about fashion. But I would have thought it'd be similar in that sense. But I guess now you mention it, because gaming is such it's like a passionate thing. So people who, by and large, like people care about the games they're making and playing games as well. And I guess my perception of fashion is less caring about the thing and more about maybe about the perception of the thing. I don't know if that's true. So you get that more transactional sort of approach. Is that?
It's definitely
I'm massively generalizing, but is that the case?
No, it's fine. From what I've experienced, it's more of a business relationship, and it's very competitive. So, if I've got a product or, I'm selling a certain item, what is the other person selling it for and things like that. So it's very competitive. And that's why I think it's really hard to keep a close network within the fashion industry. Don't get me wrong, there are people who are close to each other and stuff. But, you do see the horrible side where it's really competitive, and a lot of it is, I'm not going to lie, it's a lot of fakeness. But again, I could be generalizing because it could just be the people I was working for or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But it happens a lot with different industries, and what I've realized coming into the gaming industry is like there is that competitiveness because you do obviously want your game to do better than somebody else's game.
Yeah, because it's a business.
It's definitely a business at large, but it's still not like, okay, so I'm going to take my game, but I'm going to really try and make it better than their game. No, it's like, I want to do this how I want to do it, and I want to, please the people that are playing the game. I feel like that's more of the ethos with the gaming industry compared to, say, for example, the fashion industry. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But that's just my 2 cents,
Yeah, no, it's interesting to hear because, like I say, it's like people come from different industries, so it's always interesting to hear the perception of those industries, especially for people who are looking to get into. I mean, we're not doing a fashion versus games comparison, but for people who are considering, where their career paths can go. So, okay, this is an aspect of games that might be worth considering. Cool. So, speaking of sort of that person who's considering future roles potentially in games, is there any specific advice that you'd give to someone who's working in the games, particularly someone who might be like you, who hadn't considered games? Like, why should someone consider working in the games industry?
I think during lockdown, I've realized that people have all these hobbies and, things that they do in their pastime, and they don't realize actually a lot of it could actually be put into a career. So, for example, art. A lot of people do like drawing, and they have certain Instagram pages and things like that. What I would say is if you have a passion or you have a hobby, look into ways that you could possibly make your hobby or your passion into a career. And the way of doing that is actually getting onto social media, seeing other people's work, building a portfolio and networking. That if you ask anybody that is already within the industry, how do I get into the industry? A lot of people are willing to give advice. So I would ask the question, if it's like, even someone like me, like a personal assistant, ask me how you could get into a certain role if that's what you're interested in. And it might not be something I could answer, but I know that other people could answer it. So I could possibly pass you over to somebody I know, whether it be within this studio or somebody else, things like that. So I think just ask the right questions and find the right people, but definitely do your research. Like, social media is a platform that we never had possibly when we were growing up. I'm talking about the 90s. We didn't have that. So we have everything at our fingertips now. It's available on your phone. It's available on your laptop. Get on there, have a look around and put your hobby or your passion into it, and you'll do everything that you want to do 100%.
Cool. All right, I like that. I like that advice. That's solid advice.
Reema for president.
Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, let's get that campaign going.
Yeah.
As a personal assistant, it's quite a people-focused role, I imagine. Like, what's your approach for getting the best out of people in their role?
I think I have to be, the personality that I have, like, is being like really friendly with people, being approachable, because I know people don't like being told what to do at the best of times. But to have a genuine connection with somebody by, asking just how are you, the daily questions, how's your family, adding all of those little conversations in really help, just to be like, okay, so let's get back to work now. Can you do this meeting at this time? Things like that. So I think it really helps being approachable. And I feel like that is one of my personality traits. I feel like I am an approachable person. So I think being really open as a person or an individual, so people can talk to you and lean on you if they need to.
Okay, that makes sense, because you're in a weird position where you've got to sort of be nice but also crack the whip at some points. Yep. I imagine. How do you balance that? Is that how you do that? You sort of balance those two sides of yourself, I guess.
Definitely, but I think it really helped being a mother. So I'm like, I have to kind of do that with my daughter anyway. And she's 7 going on 17. So you can imagine what that's like. Yeah. So I feel like I bring my own personal traits from home into, my practices at work. It's not everybody's way of doing things. Don't get me wrong, because like, as I said, we're a team of 3 and all 3 of us bring different traits to the job role.
Okay.
But I think this is what works for me, and this is how I get the job done correctly.
Nice. Cool. Oh yeah. So you got that like sort of diversity within the team in terms of like definitely. Approaches to the role. Yeah. Cool. So then, actually speaking, we'll talk a bit more about sort of like diversity in within your role. But one of the things that I'm sort of always keen to do when I speak to different people is there's the perception of like gaming being for sort of certain types of people, which isn't the case, or at least doesn't have to be the case. But then as someone coming into the games industry, how do you bring yourself into the industry, into your role? Like, what does that mean to you, and how do you make sure that you're not, leaving half yourself at the door when you come in, and how do you manage that?
So I think a lot of people think there's like a stereotypical gamer, and you have to be, either someone who completely is game obsessed, or, you own every single console. But people don't realize actually gaming isn't just console gaming. It's, mobile phone gaming, it's board gaming, it's actually physical gaming, like let's get into a park and play rounders, that kind of thing. But, there's different types of games that you can play. And growing up, I guess, like, being surrounded by my brothers who brought gaming into the house, it was interesting to see, because it's not, I don't know, it's like you never saw it happening in other people's houses just because of where we were brought up as Asian Bangladeshis. Like, it just wasn't something that was done. But no one ever said, actually, if you enjoy gaming, there are certain careers you can get into gaming. No one talks about that. And I don't understand why it's never actually told, to the young ones that, actually there's certain careers that you can get into. It doesn't have to be a doctor or lawyer and things like that. And I think that's culturally.
Yeah. Well, I was going to, you kind of like touched on what I was going to say. I think it's partly a cultural thing, and this is what we know works thing, and we don't know about gaming. So
100%.
Yeah, I think
that's definitely 100%. So whereas like I'm doing what I'm doing now, I'm very open with my daughter, and I'm saying, you can do what you want to do. Just obviously, get the education that you want to get, and be passionate and enjoy what you do. Because if you don't enjoy what you do, then you're not going to progress anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's why she's always like walking around me when I'm in calls. She's like, I want to be in the meeting, or, I want to do what you do when I grow up. And she's been to the studio and she loves it. She was like fascinated by my 2 screens of a computer. And I'm like, oh, babes, like if we go into the dev side, we'll see 3,
Yeah.
So, it's these little things, but I think it's really important, because she then goes and has conversations with her friends and says, oh, well, my mummy works for a game development company. And they're like, oh, so what is that? And then they have these little conversations. They might be young, but I think it really has to start young. And this is why I feel like more studios need to go into schools, like not just high schools, but go into primary schools, show that there are different careers that you can go into from a younger age, and have the parents involved in these conversations as well, so that they can be educated and see actually it's something that works, and you don't have to be a certain type of person to go into these industries. You can be a girl, you can be a woman, you can be a man, you can whatever you want to be, just whatever you're happy and passionate about, just do it. So.
Yeah. so we're talking about the younger generation, and if we sort of skip ahead to like older people and particularly people in a position of providing employment. So I know that within your organization, as I mentioned at the beginning, you co-lead the employee resource group.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean exactly, and what do you do for that?
Okay, so our studio is very open in having conversations. You know, this is why we had an initiative in the beginning called Diversity and Inclusivity Employee Resource Group. From that, branched out certain groups. So it was the Black, Asian, Minority, Ethnic group. We had our our LGBTQ plus group. We have our Women at Splash Damage group. So we have all these groups branching out from our Diversity and Inclusivity group. What it means for me and the studio means that there's a group of people who feel like they're not always at the forefront of everybody's mind. So we can get together, we can find out different ways of getting ourselves out there and getting other people that look like us or that, you know, come from the same background that we come from, and make them see actually it's not just, you know, there are things that we can do to come together. You know, you can be exactly what I can be. But just because you feel like, you know, maybe you're not the right caste, you're not the right color, you're not the right, you know, gender, you feel like you can't come into a certain role. No, actually, we are open to everybody. And I feel like that's what's really important. And, you know, Splash Damage have done such an amazing job in showing you can be anybody. You just have to be a person who's passionate about what they do to come into a job. And, you know, there are people here who are ready to help. For me, working with the Black, Asian, Minority, Ethnic group, which hopefully we're going to change the name soon. We are working in progress to do a little bit of advertising at the moment and getting our logo together. But doing that is like, it's helped to show employees that there's a sense of community. Because growing up in school, I felt like there was always certain groups that would just, you know, kind of close off to each other. And then they would have certain events, or they would have, you know, certain stories they could share with each other just because we feel like we can relate. So I felt like, actually, why not have it within the studio? And my colleague Ash decided to help me. And at first it was just me and Ash just talking to each other and saying, you know, oh, that's similar to my, you know, my culture or my heritage. And, oh yeah, my mum and dad are like that. And, you know, oh, this is why we're like this. And, you know, having certain conversations really helped. And then, you know, carrying on doing it every month, we've noticed that other people wanted to get involved and have the conversations with us. And it's not that we're just getting together on a regular basis just to talk about, you know, our own family backgrounds or, our, you know, our heritage and things like that. No, it's like, how can we actually acknowledge our culture and how can we implement it in certain things in the studio? So one of the changes we made is that we was able to get a certain hairstylist applicable to the benefit side. So it was applicable to everybody. So we was able to get an Afro barber who was able to come in and, you know, cut hair and things like that, where it wasn't applicable previously because no one even saw it as a question to ask, why is this benefit not available to everybody? But coming together, we're like, actually, I can't get a haircut because my hair texture is different. You know, is there anything that can be done? Within like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, the conversation was had, it was changed, you know? And I think that's really important as people of certain backgrounds to have these conversations. But people might feel a little bit awkward, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say it's going to be a smooth sail conversation, but it's definitely conversations that need to be had. And as the industry is growing bigger, and there's certain things happening in the world, you know, conversations need to be had all the time.
Sure.
So if it's you're having it within communities together or you're having it with a wider studio, I think, you know, have the conversation and see what the outcome is after that.
Yeah. And yeah, no, I think that is important because you have, it's like when you have something and you've been doing something for a certain way and it's like to say, this is the way we do it. But as you become more, I guess, more inclusive and people from different backgrounds are being part of this process, it's like, actually, that way doesn't necessarily work for me. And it's not even to say that, you know, everything's going to change for every exact permeation, but it's saying like, okay, we've got different people in. How can we make sure that everyone's feeling comfortable when they come in? And I think it links back to sort of future generations where this is something I really didn't like clock onto until I started working with kids, how much like what children see kind of informs what they can do. So if I don't see myself somewhere in this game or in this studio, that kind of says it's not for me, so I don't need to consider that. And that's like cutting people off like right at the start.
The thing is, with our group, we've never been the type of people who want to enforce anything on people if they feel uncomfortable. So there's certain members, say for example myself, like I'm happy to do these kind of interviews and put my face out there because I want other people to see, actually, there's an Asian Muslim girl who is in the gaming industry, and if I'm like that, then I could do that.
Yeah.
Right? But I know it's not for everybody. Not everybody. There's some people within the community who just want to be people, who just want to get on with day-to-day life and, you know, do a role. It's fine. It's not a problem. I'm not advocating for everybody to be, you know, just
everyone
like
has
me
to go in
and
front
be
of the
out
camera
there.
and
Right.
every year.
But I think it's important to still have those people, you know, to show the younger generation that actually there's somebody that looks like you, because I think that's one thing was difficult for us growing up. There was never, you know, certain games that had representation. There was never any programs that had representation. But as the years gone on and generations have gone on, you see more of people who look like you or people that you can relate to, which is amazing. So that's what I mean. Like, you know, everything is changing now, so we need to roll with it, and we need to get in there.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. So going back to like the games development process, as someone sort of working with different groups and working kind of behind the scenes, is there an aspect of game development that you think is underappreciated by sort of players and fans that they don't quite fully realize? So not just yourself, but like people who play games, people who are fans of this medium. Do you think there's something that you wish like they had an appreciation for more?
Yeah. Do you know what? It's every single, you know, job role that goes into actually making the game. And you don't realize this, you know, there's a finance department, there's a HR department, there's, you know, a facilities team, there's, you know, the production team, there's the tech team, there's lighting artists, things like that. There's all sorts of people involved in making one game, and that's amazing. I just think people don't realize when you talk about a game and maybe you don't agree with certain things that have been put into a game. Actually, they've done extenuous research, you know, where it could be like voice actors, you know, what are their backgrounds and things like that, and what do they represent to the narrative in itself, and, you know, things like that. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in the background, and it's years of work. It's not something that happens within a month. This is years of planning, years of production, you know, developing and everything. So it's like, it's definitely an industry that needs to be talked about more, and, you know, the ins and outs of it needs to be talked about more, so people realize actually what goes into it. Because it's so easy to just buy a game and then sit there for a couple of hours and be like, yeah, it's all right, you know? But there is so much that goes into it. So I think a lot more appreciation needs to be given to these game developers, definitely.
Yeah. No, I do wonder about that. Some of the discourse around games, I feel like people need an appreciation in terms of like what, like you say, what goes into making this game and how much like time and thought goes into the games before you kind of so, you know, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but sometimes like you haven't considered everyone who's making this game and every sort of aspect of it. So yeah, I get that. Totally get that. Yeah, because I think as I always like relate things back to sort of future generations and working with young people, is that you can, like, part of what we do is like getting that appreciation for all the different roles. Like I remember recently in a in a session where I had them go on the had a group go on the Into Games website, because they've got like a bunch of different roles, and they were just like finding like different roles that they like and different aspects to it. And I had them explain what that could mean for a game. So hopefully that kind of thing is like getting people more appreciative of everything that goes into making games, because it's really hard to make games. So I don't make games, so I'm
hard.
yeah. And I say this as a former engineer, like it's hard to make games. Right?
Yeah.
Another question I wanted to add before when is about food. There's no like clean segue into this, so I'm just gonna jump.
Just put it out there.
Yeah, just put it.
What
just
do you want to
jump.
know?
Yeah. So what kind of dishes are you out here making, and do you have any cooking tips?
So I'm from a Bangladeshi background, and I was taught from a young age from my mother all the dishes that she learned as a young girl herself before she got married. And it was the process of, learn these cooking skills because you'll make a great wife one day. Forget about being a great wife. I just want to feed myself.
Yeah, I need to stay alive.
Yeah, literally. So, I make a lot of Bangladeshi cuisine where it's like, you got your lamb curries, your vegetable curries and things like that. And Bangladeshis are known for dry fish. So we have a lot of dry fish curries that we make. And
dry fish curries?
Yeah.
What's dry fish curry?
No, dry fish curry. So the fish has been dried for, I don't know, months on end in the sun.
Okay.
And it's very smelly. Don't get me wrong. It's very smelly.
Yeah.
But then you basically clean it off and stuff, put it in one pot, put loads of vegetables like potatoes, runner beans, you name it, spinach, everything. Put loads of chili powder, a little bit of turmeric, and you just let it boil for a long time. And it's almost like a soup-based curry, but then it's just spicy as hell. And it's like, I love it. We love spice. So, put some scotch bonnet in it as well. Like the taste, the smell. It's the most delicious thing to have during summer. I see you licking your lips.
Yeah, I know. I haven't had lunch yet, so I'm like, this is a bad question to ask, actually. So I should have had lunch before we did this recording.
Definitely. But what I've noticed with running our Black Asian minority ethnics group is that we have come together a lot about food. I think food is one of the things that has brought us together, whether it's like we've been sharing recipes or we just literally bring in food from each other's cultures and we like share it with each other, and things like that. I think it's really interesting because when I was younger, when I was in high school, we used to do World Culture Day, and it was kind of like an Independence Day, and we'd have like a little show where there'll be different dances, different singers, different instruments being played, but it was also like an international food court kind of thing, where our parents would donate dishes. So people would get to taste different dishes and stuff. So that's one thing I researched within the world, and I said, there must be a specific day, right, that we can actually do this kind of event and maybe bring it to the studio, because we all love food, we all love culture. Let's come together and do this. So I think it's been we've celebrated 2 World Culture Days now within the studio, and we've had a food buffet area, we've had Bollywood dance class, we've had henna, we've had language classes and things like that. And we did it remotely as well last year, and it was really amazing. And this year we're going to do it for the whole month of August. We're going to have different events for the employees and, different people coming in and sharing their experience and stuff. And I think that's really important, to share knowledge, share experiences and talk about this stuff. So yeah, I'm really excited.
Nice.
Bring on the food, bring on the culture. I love it.
Yeah. I'm definitely having lunch after this. So
when lockdown's over, we'll go for a good curry. I'll take you somewhere nice.
Cool. All right, it's done. It's on video, so it's happening. So speaking of culture, I want to go back to family, and particularly people from ethnic minority culture, and this question of, well, not so much a question, but what you were saying about dropping out of university and the implications that had in terms of family. So as a mother now, what would you say to young people, maybe even your own daughter, but what would you say to young people in a situation of, I like video games, I might want to work in this industry, but I know my family wouldn't approve. Like, how would you approach that today?
I think it's really important that if you feel like there's a job that you want to do or there's a role that you want to get into, obviously do the research. But as I said before, network. So find the people that you can talk to who would be able to give, your parents even a briefing of what the job would entail, what's the kind of money that you could possibly make, what is your progression within it. It's, money is important. We're not going to lie. A lot of our parents, have that doctor, lawyer role in their heads that they want our kids to be, because then they can bring the money in, right? It's not always just about what the career entails. It's also about the money it involves. So, have these conversations, find these people, look at different websites where, as you said, there's loads of career websites that have the career descriptions, the job descriptions, and, you can email the companies and ask them, what are the salary expectations and things like that. I'm sure there are people out there that would love to have a conversation with you. So it's get your parents involved in the conversations just as much as you need to get involved in the conversations, because my parents would know nothing about the gaming industry unless I was in it. So now that I'm in it, I can tell them more about my experience and, tell them about the other roles within the studio and share all of that. So yeah, I just think have the conversations, definitely.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. I think we are in that space where especially after the year that was 2020, like what was safe and secure might not be so safe and secure going forward, and things that you might not have heard of 10 years ago are going to be sort of the next, like the future thing. So I can imagine in a future world where, parents are saying, you should be working in video games because that's safe and secure. Can you imagine
right,
that? Right,
exactly.
And this other thing, like, don't do this other thing, to work in video games, because we know that there's money in that. So that could be something. But Reema, thank you for joining me. I definitely regret the food question, but other than that, it's been good talking to you and finding out about your role.
Thank you so much. No, thank you so much for having me. Like, I really appreciate the time and efforts you've taken to do this. And if anybody wants to ask any questions, you can reach out to Nigel, reach out to myself. I'm available on Twitter and Instagram and things. So just get at us and ask the questions. Yeah,
no, I think that's really good advice. Ask questions, honestly. Like, ask questions. It amazes me when I do talks and it comes to the Q&A and like kids, they don't want to ask questions, and that's the important part, ask questions. So yeah, good advice. And we'll put your Twitter and everything in the video description so people can follow that. Our links will be in there as well. But yeah, reach out, do your research, network, all that good stuff. So thank you for joining me. If anyone is particularly interested, like I said, we'll have details in the description, including our Discord, so you can let us know what you think about this interview, any requests for future interviews that we can do as well. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube, follow us on Twitch so you can catch more online events. And also, if you have just, as I will say, if you have just heard my voice over this and like, yeah, I'd like to hear more of this guy's voice, we also do a podcast, Story X Story, myself and Tazzy, talking about stories across pop culture, including video game discussions. So we'll put that link in the description. Other than that, I've been Nigel here talking with Reema. Hope you've enjoyed the interview, and we will see you again soon for another one. Take care, everyone. Hey there, I'm Nigel from mayamada. Thanks for watching our video. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the other great videos we have on the channel. You can also join the GamePad Discord and check out the next event at gamepad.events. We'll see you soon.